All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Conservatish episode 184. My name is Peter Feliciano. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening. Make sure you subscribe. Listen. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening. Make sure you hit the bell on YouTube, okay? Don't just subscribe, silly goose. Hit the bell. And find me on Instagram at Peter_Feliciano and also at CONSERVATISH, because that's my backup account just in case they shut it all down. You can find me on MeWe. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook, kind of, sort of. You can find me all over the place. And also you can support this podcast and my music at patreon.com/conservatish. Speaking of my music, I put out, as most of you already know, I put out a lovely instrumental original on Friday, and then there's going to be another one this Friday, and then another one next Friday, followed by on the fourth Friday, which is going to be the 14th, I believe, of May. I'm going to put out a big cover song. So I've got lots of music coming at you. I just wanted to get it out, and I hope you enjoy it. Now, ladies and gentlemen and Zers, we have the wonderful Universal Egg on the show. Yay! I'm so happy.
Thank you so much.
Now, a couple of things. Where can people find you?
Oh, I'm on Instagram at the moment, and it's the_universal_egg. And it's a work in progress Instagram profile. Sometimes I change content. At the moment, I'm doing a course to have a bit of a more spiritual kind of background and more knowledge to help people and become some sort of like consciousness guide. So it's like a work in progress at the moment. Yeah.
All right. Well, lovely. Yeah. Well, everybody go subscribe to the Universal Egg. So a couple of things. Number one, you're Italian.
Yes. So I'm Italian born and bred, and then I came to Australia 5 years ago. And now I reside here.
Good, because I ate a lasagna upside down in order to prepare for this.
Oh, I've seen worse.
I put a shrimp on the wood-fired brick. All right. Anyway, all right. So that's cool. Yeah, because when I think I got introduced to you maybe through a meme. I just was following stuff. It's weird how random. There's like a weird little community flowering out. And the reason why I wanted to have you specifically on is because you don't necessarily fall in line with all of the 100% liberal ideas. Mm-hmm. Yet at the same time, you focus on spirituality in a lot of your shit. And I like that, because too often I mean, one of the main goals of the show is to break the norms and to break what the hell am I trying to say? To break the narratives. And the narrative these days in America anyway is everyone on the right is just an evil, stuffy Christian, and everyone on the left is just a crystal having, they're the spiritual ones, and the right is the religious ones who are all stuffy and don't want you to have sex and blah blah blah. But I like people who break that norm, who are not, and I don't even know what your politics are, but I just like people who, and there's like a little community building out around that. So it's, I don't know. So I'm grateful to have you on.
Thanks. Well, when it comes to political sides, I've been fortunate enough not to live in a family that had strong political sides, and to be honest, I still don't know what my father and my mom like root for, because I've always seen them kind of like complain about both sides. So I thought, okay, I guess that there's not really a good side to pick, like either right or left or whatsoever. And so I kind of grew in that environment, and I've been pretty much neutral until I came to Australia. And then I kind of became interested in politics and what's going on in the world. And I guess that the US politics is the one to go for first, because it kind of trickles down worldwide what's going on. And so it's quite fun to watch. So that's why when it comes to my personal view, I embrace both sides. And I think that's a lot of moderate people can, find themselves into this description. For example, sometimes I'm very democratic when it comes to certain topics, and a bit more conservative into others. So yeah, that's how I would describe my political situation right now. But spirituality in all this, I see it as, how would you say, as a work that everybody should, get into at a certain point in their lives, because most of the time what happens in the world is a reflection of yourself and the issues that you have in yourself. And that's what I kind of came to this conclusion 5 years ago when I came here, and I still had a lot of things that were dragging me from the past, and I was still repeating this never ending cycle of coping mechanisms, and I felt stuck. And most of the time when people find themselves in that stuck moment where they feel something is wrong in their life and they are in that stagnation mode, it's when most of the time something clicks and you start doing the work.
What does the work look like to you these days?
It's mostly ego work and inner child work. Simply because whichever reaction you have today when you're triggered or activated is just a reflection of what happened to you in the past. And I found that, within myself. So whenever something was happening, my reaction is to be anxious and to have these panic attacks. And so I wanted to dig a bit deeper and what triggered that, into my little child back in days, and when it all started. And then ego work, goes alongside. When it comes to ego, it's pretty much the identity that each one of us have. So I guess that to a certain extent, I don't like the way, how would you say? I don't like the way social media are portraying ego, because most of the time, just like ego is bad, you should like detach from ego. And there's this mystification of the ego where you should bypass it. And that's where spiritual bypassing, is mainstream and, spread in the web. And I think it's a very dangerous concept to go into, because it doesn't bring you back to this body and this 3D-ness that we are living, and it's tangible, and it's the only thing that that we're really, witnessing on a, concrete level. And so ego is identity, and it's the self, it's the I. Right. And when it becomes like too much or too little of it, that's where the trouble begins. Right. And that's where we start acting out of fear or anger or insecurities, or, either in a we become that sort of like defensive or offensive mode when we get triggered. Right. And you can easily copy and paste this concept into politics, right?
Sure. And it's also a valid part of this. It's not a mistake that our ego is in us. You know what I mean? It's not a piece of us that we need to shut down and shut up and turn it down and ignore and blow past and tell it to shut up. Because I'm telling you from my experience, that shit does not work, because it is a part of me. And when it knows, when my friend Dave Walsh, who I've had on the show a couple of times, great guy. And I did some hippie crap with him a couple of times, hypnotherapy session. I actually fucking really, I never thought I would do that shit ever. How
was it?
It was fucking amazing, man. It was, and it's not the same type of amazing where it's like, a rain dance thing. You know what I mean? What I appreciate about Dave and other like down to earth people is that with Dave, I could be as skeptical as I wanted to be. I didn't have to make believe it was sacred before, or buy in 100% to the mumbo jumbo. I didn't have to do any of that stuff. I could be skeptical. I could make a dick joke right before the session. Like, it didn't have to be, I think a signature mark of someone who's not insecure. You know what I mean? One of the things he told me, we were talking about ego one time, and he talked about how the ego, not only is it a valid part of us, but also when it knows it's going to get fed, and we could go into what fed means, but when it knows it's going to get fed, it can learn to wait. It can learn to pause. It can learn that it doesn't have to. It's almost like a little dog, like a yapping little dog. You know what I mean? Like if it knows you're going to go out in just a minute, but not right now, then it's
Yeah.
not leading us around by the nose. But you don't kill your dog. You don't say, oh, you want to go outside again? You don't beat it. You don't do that. You know what I mean? Because it
Yeah.
is a valid thing. It deserves a life and it deserves a voice. You know what I mean?
That's right.
When I treat myself, when I try to be a little nicer, even to the darker part of me or the self-centered part of me or whatever it is, I find I can grow past it. But I think you're absolutely right. When I just put on the blinders and say, shut up to a piece of me, that's not only is that not nice, it's also not effective, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And and look, ego is just that sort of togetherness of values and beliefs and habits that we kind of made ours to guarantee us to receive love at all times. So sometimes even when there are these moments where sometimes, yes, we embrace some certain values and habits that kind of make us receive love in an unhealthy way, and that's where the shit hits the hits the fan. uh, but
How dare you
yeah.
cuss on my show? I'm a very
Oh,
pure.
damn, sorry. And that's where you need to realize that you are not attracting, but you're allowing certain toxic relationships in your life for this reason. And that feels like a lost moment in your life. You're like, okay, but that's all I knew, that's all I thought was right. Where do I go from here? And that's where most of the time, like, having some sort of support by your side, may that be mental health support or spiritual support, is vital. So you have the right tools to get back to who you really are. And that's a tricky question to ask all the time, like, who are you really? And you are all this name and the job that you do, and I'm a son, I'm a daughter of someone, I'm a friend, I'm all the affection that I give. And but then you kind of shift onto a more like metaphysical level, right? So who are you beside all these earthly stuff? And then you're like, okay, I guess that I'm the attention that I give. I am, and then you just come to the ontological perspective that you just are, you exist. And it's a very nice introspective like game to play, just to kind of push your boundaries of self, like how much can you be, how much can you let go, and who you are really.
Right. So you've been doing this type of work for what, 5 years, you say?
No, it's actually more recent than that. I think last year, since COVID, I felt that certain aspects of myself exacerbated a lot, especially insecurities and doubt. Um, I am, just to give you a bit of perspective, I came here with the aim of being in like a tourism career field. And I did for a couple of years. I was like a tour operator agent, and then COVID struck and I felt kind of lost. I was one of those people that was sent home, living by an incentive, the subsidy, and just not knowing what to do next. And so I thought, okay, what's the second thing that I always wanted to do and I never put time and effort to it? And I thought mental health and mental well-being for other people. And that's the kind of studies that I'm rotating around. And so that was quite enlightening for a certain aspect. But then on the other side, I didn't feel ready to help other people because I had to help myself first, obviously. And so I went through some consciousness, work, and that's where I started doing the work, the inner child work, the ego work. And it's all a work in progress. I'm not saying that I'm enlightened or any sort of way,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm very, I'm far from that, but it comes in waves, you do some exercise and you come to that state of presence, awareness. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Eckhart Tolle. Is
Yeah,
is a spiritual teacher, and he talks a lot about presence and just applying mindfulness in your life. And you do these little exercises that keep you grounded. And most of the time these exercises are related to sensory awareness. So for example, what you smell, what you see, what you touch keeps you like grounded and doesn't make you float between the past and the future and all the preoccupations and concerns around that.
Right.
So once you become aware of that presence, and it's just like a very quick snap of it, then you come back to your life and you do the same things. And when you get to caught up by those things, that's where you reapply that presence.
Right.
Okay. And so that's why it comes in waves. You can't be in a state of presence all the time. I guess it's very energy consuming.
Yeah, I don't even think that, I mean, like I said about the ego thing, like I think we're supposed to fuck up. I think we're supposed to. I don't think we're making a mistake. Here's what I mean. I don't think the goal is perfection. And I think that
That's right.
making the ideal perfection is, I mean, certainly for me in many aspects of my life, it's made me want to give up more. It's made me not be okay with the tiny, minuscule progress that I make, because I'm like, well, I'm never gonna, when am I gonna pull my head out of my ass type of behavior and mindset, which makes me want to give up and say, screw it, I'm just gonna get a pizza, and eat and TV. But like, so appreciating the small, as corny as this whole episode is, I don't care for my fans who are like, but I don't, whatever. I do what I fucking do. But like the appreciating the small victories, appreciating the truth about my exact situation, like you were saying, sensory, you know what I mean? It's a work in progress, but it also, I think we're always a work in progress. I don't trust nobody who's a guru. Nobody. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to, you know what I mean? Tell me from your experience, you know what I mean? Guru person, tell me how you messed up yesterday. I want to know, you know what I mean? Oh, I picked my nose yesterday, or, oh, I didn't do my dishes, the other day.
That's
or,
right.
I want to hear about humanness, because if I have to, I think it's, what's the thing I'm trying to say? Not only is it unattainable, but it also sets people up who are more guru-ish anyway, to get lost in that, and that to be their smokescreen and their identity, and sets them up to abuse others. And also, it also is a way for people who are, all of us who are flawed, to put those people up on a pedestal. I can't do the small writing. I can't do the 5-minute meditation because I'm not them. They're Superman. None of us are Superman.
There's ego in both sides, actually.
Yes. Right. And it's minuscule change is the only thing we have. It's the only thing we have.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And like you say, it's not about killing the ego, but like soothing the ego and feeding it, and try to like reassure it that it will be heard and it will be seen, but it's just a matter of, okay, let's give it some space now between the what happened and the reaction from the ego perspective. Let's just put some space in between. Let's see what happens, what is triggering within me. And that's how you build a relationship with your ego and what's behind it. That's where you see a lot of these coping mechanisms that you repeat and repeat all the time. And it's a big job. There's a lot of tears shed into that. I personally can say that. But the reward is like worthy. So it's perfect. Now, when it comes to how to do the work, I don't have like a specific thing to advise, simply because I'm still doing the work.
What has there been any tools that you've tried that's like, definitely not for me?
Oh, I think that's still meditation, like being still, stopping myself. And for such a long time, it doesn't work for me yet, since I have issues with anxiety, being too much in my body for such a long time. Instead of calming myself, it brings more anxiety. So most of the time, I like to be mindful when I'm on the go, when I do stuff. So that's why there's stuff like active meditation, or there's more like ecstatic dance. So you're more in a meditative state while you move, or just simply going for a run and being simply concentrated in a run, helps. So that's my go-to.
But even when you're dancing, you're present too?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're focusing on your breath, you're focusing on your body, the sensation that your body has in that moment. If there's any tightness, if there's any softness in your body, it's different, but at least you're not static and trying to, I don't know, scan yourself like that. I really can't stand it. At
Dude,
least that's my opinion.
so I've been sober for 19 years, and meditation is a part of the spiritual practice that I'm technically supposed to be doing, but I didn't.
Supposed to.
Now, I didn't really start in earnest until like about a year and a half ago, because I
Yeah.
told myself, hello, I told myself the message that I'm too crazy for meditation. Now, a lot of it was pretty valid, but I didn't want to start with a minute. I didn't want to start with, I wanted to jump ahead. And I had this um, unhealthy notion that unless I could do 5, 10, 20 minutes, just completely spiritual, what's the point? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I just would find other ways. I was too crazy is what I can't shut my mind off. I remember literally one time I was doing a guided meditation. This was maybe 20 years ago. I was doing a guided meditation. I remember we're all lying down over the hill, and the tape says, you know, you go through a gate. Oh, you open the gate. You see a letter on the ground. Open the letter. What does the letter look like? You know, what does the key look like? And my brain
Yeah.
literally got hooked up on what does the key look like. I thought unless I visioned the correct key, I was not going to have a good meditative experience. I was not good at this. It was just so much fear around something that could have been much looser, you know, around this thing that is designed to be imperfect. There's I was listening to John Cleese's book, and he talks about in certain aspects of life, some researcher posited this idea that progress is not a gradual thing. It's you jump up and it's a plateau, sometimes a long plateau, and then a jump, and then a plateau, and then a jump. And I think a lot of my personal growth has, because I've made incredible fucking strides, even in the last couple months, has been sometimes just being patient with the plateau. Sometimes it's being like, or patient with the dip or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I totally relate to that. I first of all wanted to acknowledge the fact that you like been sober for this long time. Like it's such a great work. But I felt the same. When I get too stagnated to a point, I feel restless. I feel like I'm not doing enough, or maybe I should do more. I don't know, and all sort of things. But it is good to remind yourself that it's a non-linear process. So whenever you are, you know, on that plateau for too long, you just be patient, and there will be new inputs, and there will be new tools that you will apply to yourself, and that will, you know, do great on you. Or maybe not. It's all even an exclusion game. You know, you try something, it doesn't work. You try something else.
Right.
And when it comes to, you know, still meditation or like guided meditation, I find that helpful, because when I have to focus too much on my breath, my mind goes places. And it's like to think, you know, of your head like an open temple, you know, like, you know, thoughts are like air that gets in and gets out, or maybe it stays and all that stuff, which is fine. But most of the time, a guided meditation goes a long way with me, because at least I'm concentrating onto something. And so you walk the gate and all that stuff. And I guess that the most powerful meditation I've had so far, guided one, is an inner child meditation. So it's when you visualize your little Peter or your little Val, and you're there, and they're all like so how would you say, so naive, so unspoiled by
Yeah,
society and all that
vulnerable.
stuff, vulnerable, and so in touch with their oneness, and they haven't been through any trauma yet. And when I first visualized that, I started crying, because I thought, look at this person, like look at this little kid, like how perfect it was, and how, you know, I came to this level of just coping mechanisms and negativity and anxiety and all those bad things that I dragged so long. For example, even the wounds that people gave to me and all that stuff, the unhealed stuff that I wanted to drag with resentment and hate, and it's too much after a bit, and then you just burst into tears like all of a sudden.
Yeah,
And
yeah, no, I relate. When I was the first 2 years of my sobriety was in this emotional growth boarding school, and it
mhm,
was positive and certainly negative in a lot of ways too. But one of the things that I experienced was we did do some work on inner child stuff, and I definitely processed some stuff. But
mhm,
when I dipped back into it about maybe I guess it was about 2.5 years ago with my friend Dave, I felt this weird thing, and I did not know it was going to come. But the feeling that I felt, and this is like real, the feeling that I felt when I looked at or thought about my inner child was revulsion.
mm,
That was weird because for a long time my MO has been I'm bad, I'm self-hate, whatever, lots of different things. And also,
mhm.
and maybe it's my Gemini, whatever, but I'm also like, I'm either like better than everybody or worse than everybody, right? A lot of humans
Yeah,
experience. But
that's right.
I didn't know that I was going to feel that. And that was more, I mean, it was a like a get this vulnerability, even though it's valid or whatever. That's what made me hurt. That's what
Mm,
kept me in a position to be hurt. So I want to get rid of that. I'm strong. I'm whatever. Not being. Not. I don't want to be motherfucking. I certainly don't want to look at that. So that was the
yeah,
feeling I felt, and that was a weird. That was a weird. But like with the right people who are not gurus, with the right
yeah.
people who are experienced enough to and talk about it like you and I are doing. There's no what's the word I'm looking for? There's no wrong feeling. There's no wrong reaction. It's
Yeah.
totally natural, whatever I'm doing, whether it's revulsion or crying or happy or whatever, and it changes all the time. But like there's all of the reactions are natural. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's so important to provide that sort of non-judgmental space for the person that wants to go through this very, very vulnerable work. I can only imagine like how you would have felt like back when you felt that repulsion towards your inner child. And it's most of the time because we like to identify as the hero of our own story. All the trauma, all the wounds that happen to us. We really don't want to sit too much with that victim state and we want to do something about it. So that's why sometimes when we identify too much into our hero self, we kind of neglect that softness that should be applied to our victim self instead. Like there's been moments that we've actually been victims and we couldn't do anything about it. I don't know, family violence, domestic violence, sexual violence, I mean, you name it. But then it's also what you make out of it as well, the reaction that you want to apply to it. Some people like as well shift too much on the other tip side, I mean, of the spectrum. They want to stay victim, and that's where, even politically speaking, you have been victim and you are powerless and you want to throw shit to, I mean, whoever is oppressing you and all that stuff, and you forget about your own power that you always had and you still have despite all the obstacles in society. um but yeah, like it's good to, as a hero in this case, it's good to acknowledge your victim child, your child that was wounded, and it's good to soften it and integrate it. Fragmentation is another big topic to discuss about, the fragmentation of self, modern fragmentation of society.
Right. So what you're saying essentially, because I've heard that idea before, is that
Yeah.
if you're in a safe space and a safe time, you kind of, whether with somebody or what, there's been times where, I was shown to write some stuff that like give a voice to this revulsion. I sat down and I did it.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
was, it, I swear to God, because again, people know me. I'm not a dirty hippie. Like I don't like. I look askance at anything, like, oh, you're burning candles, whatever. Because a lot of people do get lost. I think you've posted about it. A couple of other accounts I follow. There's an idea of, oh, everything's positive all the time. I believe in myself, blah, 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 where you're just not, you're not being real.
Yeah.
You're not being real. And so, but giving my that dirty, dark part a voice, it was heavy. It was one of the heavier experiences. And it almost felt I felt in my body, but it also felt like that it didn't feel like, that something else was writing it. It felt like I was writing it, but there was another energy. There was another thing in my lungs, in my voice writing this. I felt like I was shaking. It was weird as fuck, for sure.
Very, very intense. But it's good that you felt it. It seems that maybe you kept trapped it for a long time, and it was good like to let it out once for all and give life to that. But then it's up to you, what you make about that experience. Are you still gonna keep that wounded child trapped, or you still want to like acknowledge it and give voice to it, like internally? You don't have to like throw that wounded child reaction to the world. You will come to a point where you are integrated to a point where, how would you say it, that you get triggered and you give yourself the time to analyze it within yourself, like hey, what's going on, little Peter? What's happening with you? Are you hurt? Are you wounded? And all that
You need
stuff.
to stop calling it my little Peter. Finally, a penis joke. Anyway, continue.
Well, I kind of like called it. Anyway, yeah. So you start talking to your inner child, and you have that like inner debriefing before instead going into defensive or offensive mode and say, what the fuck are you talking about, and all that stuff. So it's hard. Most of the time I fall, in front of those triggers, because it's tough. It's tough. Like, and I still have those habits of feeling like judged and feeling like someone might not love me because they're not accepting me fully and all that bullshit. But then again, you also need to understand that the other person in front of you has their own experience, has their own inner child that they need to integrate, or they're still blaming, or like, keeping caged within themselves. And then you start seeing things from a different whole perspective that I
Right.
didn't know of.
Right. And I think let's transition a little bit into that part, because one of the things that I like about myself, and I think is maybe different than some of the people on the non-liberal side of podcasts or shows or whatever, is I like getting into the psychology of people. And sometimes that's a very healthy thing, and sometimes that's a very powerful thing, sometimes not so healthy. But what one of the things is the victim mentality. You okay on time? Okay. The victim mentality, which we all have, I kind of feel like every human has both victim and bully, sometimes at the same time, right? And there are people, who's a good example? There are people, so Trevor Noah sometimes is one of the ones that I talk about. If one of the sentences I say about him, you know who Trevor Noah is?
Yeah. Is it the comedian? Like on...
Kind of. Yeah, Daily Show.
Yeah, exactly.
I say kind of because he's not funny. But
he wants to be funny though. At least that's what I think he wants to
I think he wants to have a platform. I don't think he cares about humor at all. But anyway, so one of the things I talk about with him is if he says a sentence that doesn't have the word apartheid in it, it's a miracle, because every 5 seconds he has to remind everybody about his identity and his history, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a very powerful thing. But if you're especially if you're in the comedy world and you're not just a public speaker or a one-man show person, if you're in the comedy world and we are trusting you to be a comedian and you put message above art, you're not giving us what we want, right? And that's why ultimately I don't think he's going to have, he'll have a career, but as far as who's your favorite comedian, as far as comedy fans, no one says Trevor Noah ever. Even the last 5 people who are still watching The Daily Show. But anyway, Now you have Trevor Noah on one hand, who had a bad childhood, grew up half black, half white in South Africa. Stuff was not okay for him. And now for the rest of his life, did you guys know things are bad for me? Richard Pryor, who was also faced a lot of racism, grew up with a prostitute mother, was born in a brothel, okay, molested, beaten, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But not every bit was about his identity. He talked about race, but he also talked about a hunting story and a bear. You know, he talked about sex. He talked about, you know, a relationship. He talked about boxing. He talked about all kinds of stuff. So why? Because a lot of the liberals think my experience dictates my reaction to it, dictates my perception of it, and dictates my actions. You know what I'm saying? That because I was a victim, of course I'm throwing a riot in the street because someone was mad to me or bad to me at some point. Or because I grew up black, that gives me a blank check for my behavior. Why was Richard Pryor not an annoying victim? I mean, he was in his own way, but like, why was he not an annoying victim? Why did he put art above message and Trevor can't? It wasn't just experience. We're not a monolith when it comes to that, right? So what I'm trying to put forth is to you is, what do you think about the I kind of posit that the fulcrum about living in victimhood or not, it maybe is healing, but I don't think Richard was in a lot of therapy. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't look like that. Maybe he healed a different way. I don't know what it is. What do you think it might be?
Right. I kind of disagree when artists in general want to slide sort of political message behind their art. I think it's a bit spoiled, but then again, there's a lot of, like, you know, paintings and songs and comedy shows that have some sort of like propaganda, let's call it like that, behind it, and it still works. I guess that I think it's a bit forced lately, this sort of oppression thing, especially in America. Lots of the democratic side is advancing this idea that we live in an oppressed and country, a stolen land, and I don't even think that at a certain point they're proud of being American at all. At least that's the sort of gist I get from an outsider perspective. Whereas, and I guess that it says a lot in terms of their own work not done, or their own victimhood that they're still living, or what they want to do with their victimhood. It's all about what you want to do with it, right? Because, for example, you name the other comedian, and you wouldn't like tell that he went through all those difficulties unless you go through his biography and all that stuff. So yeah, I think it's all a matter of reacting out of your own trauma that translates into your art, the way it's shown. But I would like highly, not recommend to, be that propagandistic when you want to show your art into the world.
That's part of
But
the
it's very controversial, because sometimes it is a good idea, but sometimes it's not. It can fuel lots of, hate and more violence. And, you really need to be conscious when you want to slide a message,
right.
Mm.
That's kind of part of the reason why I wanted to have you on, is to have this talk, because personally, I have a hard time. It's gotten better, but there was a couple of weeks there last year during the George Floyd stuff, especially, where I kind of got some. I don't want to say I got some trauma, but hey, listen, but that's legit. That's legit.
Yeah.
Thinking that the world was really ending. We were in a pandemic with the George Floyd riots. We had all kinds of stuff going on. It's normal to feel a little skittish. It's normal to feel a little traumatic. Now, was any of that happening in my city or near me anyway? No. I think at one time, even though I'm in Manhattan, at one time there was like a kind of a spin-off protest march, whatever, over here with a bunch of white kids, in the streets over here, passing out Capri Suns. I talked about it on the show, but it didn't come into my world, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that this ends. So I want I'm looking to give space to this concept of self-care and spiritual healing and all that shit, even though I'm on a podcast where I say horrible words and make horrible jokes and have horrible people on. In fact, I think you're the first night person. No. So because it's important, even though I dunk my head in news and I, whatever, or I look at social media, being conscious of it, let's talk about a little bit about how you practice your version of self-care and stay informed at the same time. For me, like I'm being maybe a little more intentional about it, giving myself sometimes 2-hour breaks maybe once a month, sometimes less, sometimes more. I give myself a whole day off of social media. I don't care what's going on out there, because not only does it not really affect me, a lot of social media news is built in order to get me upset so that I will click more. You know what I mean? And so how do you practice self-care and stay aware at the same time?
It's a very, well, we're dancing on a very fine line over here. So as for me, I like to engage with people from my opposite views in whichever view I have. That maybe is more conservative on one hand and more democratic on the other one. I like to challenge the opposite view that I have. So I know it's a bit of a self-sabotage thing, because it's a bit of an energy strainer, but I think it's helpful for me to build a more, how would you say, complete view of one topic. But also I'm very mindful about when to have this sort of conversation. I like to be, ready mentally to have some sort of backlash or name calling and all that stuff. So whenever that happens, I like to give myself a break as well, which is maybe for one day I'm not like touching my social media and all that stuff. But yeah, well, when it comes to where to get my information from, so far, I think that the best app I found is Ground News, which gives you the perfect political bias for each article you want to read. So if you want to, read a more like, lefty bias article, you have the percentage down there. Or if you want a more like right-minded article, knock yourself out, you have plenty. And yeah, so that's the one that I go the most, but it doesn't have all the articles. That's the thing, at least worldwide. For the US, there's plenty of. But when it comes to Australia, I have to be a bit more mindful about the research that I do. I have some sort of a political bias tab in which I know like which article, or like which company writes more like left-leaning articles and which one writes more right-leaning stuff. So it's a bit of a a hard work, but if you want to know the complete side of the story, you need to be willing to do this extra work, which sometimes is a bit of a ball breaking, but it is the way it is. And yeah, sorry, go.
I was saying, I've actually gotten pretty good with comment fights. Sometimes they are necessary, right? But and I think part of it is because I think, and this is maybe a message to some of the right-leaning people who follow me, because too often it gets so easy, even though the right conservative people are like, oh, they're just focusing on identity. Leftists are focusing on identity, and that's true. But right-leaning people, you can't just say this person who disagrees with me is stupid or unpatriotic or no. They're scared. They're in their bubble just like I'm in my bubble, right? And so coming at it from a psychological and understanding as best I can anyway, aspect helps. And then also writing out what I'm going to say, sometimes leaving it for like a half hour, sometimes an hour if it's real charged up, because there's no urgency, and just leaving it and then coming back to it, rewriting, cutting out parts, what is the message I'm actually trying to say, and then posting it also really helps.
Yeah, I find it very useful too, to give like we were saying, to give some space between the action and the reaction, which usually comes to a bit more mindful comments as well. Usually the ones that I'm lately going more towards is the discussion between capitalism versus communism or Marxism in general. I find a very hard time speaking to a Marxist or a communist that has some sort of visible alternative to the capitalism society. But nonetheless, I know that there are like some, Marxists and communists that have some sort of like, more tangible solution into place. I just didn't bump into them yet.
Yeah.
When it comes to what left should do and what right should do, I actually watched yesterday a lecture from Emi Chua, which is like a law professor in some school in the US, and she was talking about this polarization and how could people come together from both sides of the political spectrum. Also, because that's a good point that you said, it's like name shaming or like calling them names, the other opposite of the spectrum. Well, what you're doing is like you are preventing yourself from having that healthy discussion that we should have in order to become one country, one population again. And I'm not only in the US, but worldwide in general. And one thing, I think I wrote it down somewhere, what this professor said is that from the left side, like it's important to expose all the awful injustices that society is experiencing now and is like recording more of now. But there's a very fine line over there, especially in campuses and university. These progressive thoughts and beliefs become very dangerous when it comes to have this approach towards history, as what we're talking about, that America is founded on genocide, white supremacy, and oppression. It really makes you feel like there's nothing worth fighting for this America, right? On the other side of the spectrum, there should be more mindfulness as well towards the right leaning people. For example, let me see, like in a country where there's like patriotism, where patriotism could be, how do you say, the common thread between left and right. The right leaning people are not applying that sort of patriotism in a healthy way as well. Like, for example, just singing the national anthem and just having the American flag just standing outside is not helpful to make America great again. I guess that in order to overarch a nationalism that can bind both sides of the spectrum, right-leaning people need to consider also that minorities have to have their voice heard and have to have their experience validated in a way that policies should protect them too, so that it is for them, it is also an America worth fighting for. Mm-hmm. So coming together this way probably can make America a more united country more than a polarized one. And I found this opinion like great, and she wrote like lots of books, even in terms of foreign policies. She's a great person, and I found lots of truth in it. Like there needs to be a coming together from both sides of the spectrum, otherwise we're just gonna keep fighting each other for it's just a waste of energy anyway.
Definitely. I am interested to know, to ask you about that specific idea. We were
meaning I'm interested.
About that specific idea where you said that people of color need to know that they are protected as well by the law in America. And sometimes I know that because you do sound like you're well informed, but I don't know if there's any policy wise where people of color in America anyway are not protected.
I'm not sure about that. It's more probably
Like a spirit
about,
of it, or like a,
no, I think more, well, when we talk about, for example, racist attitudes towards certain minorities, I guess that could be a bit more confined and a bit more regulated. I'm not sure if there's already something put into place, but for example, what we see worldwide is these sort of like, on a defensive level, we have this, police brutalities happening. And I know that statistics are more to the white people side. I mean, it's more, how do you say, it's more negative toward the white people side, because I think that on an average, on a yearly basis, more white people get killed by police brutality than black people. But it's more about like really giving more voice to the minorities, but in a way that, how would you say, like, for example, more on a cultural level, there should be more maybe protection, more freedom to express themselves. But I'm not sure where I'm going with this.
that's all right.
Yeah, but it's more like a reverse question to you, for example, like you think that in America there's no, or there is already a policy or a law that protects everybody, no matter what's their, for example, their gender or their
Yeah,
political
as
gender or cultural identity whatsoever.
right, there has been 100% for a while now. As far as
Mm-hmm.
rate, I believe it was 68, as far as on the books. Now they've added addendums and changed things, especially when it comes to employment and things like that. But for upwards of
Right.
20 years, it's been for everybody. Trans people is coming closer. I still hear stories every once in a while of mostly companies not knowing how to, like a rehab as an example, like
Mm-hmm.
we have a transgender person. We have other clients who are non-trans. We have clients who are women. We have clients who are men. There's someone who's
Mm-hmm.
coming in who's a trans person, or even prison, right?
Yeah.
Where do we put them? Because they
Mm.
wouldn't feel comfortable with the men if say if they are transgender women, they wouldn't feel
Yeah.
comfortable with the men necessarily, but they also could rape some women. So how do we? But us having a learning curve to figure that out, there's nothing on the books that says we can uh, uh, treat them unfairly. But as far as race, yeah, across the board, I think the main problem it is definitely we have some bridges to gap.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as how to do that, it's already done. It's already done policy wise, and the reason why there's more calls for policy is because they honestly, I think the left wants flags more than they do want change.
Mm.
Long as and they want government to have more money. For the love of God, government, please have more money and have more power and have more bureaucracy, because they're. I personally believe
Mm.
a lot of them are mad at authorities. A lot of them are mad at daddy. And
Mm.
so if they can replace mean white daddy with overarching mean white daddy who's going to be nice to us because he told us he's going to be nice to us. He's not as mean as Orange Man. He's a different white daddy. And so he's going to be nicer to us because he says nice things. He may be bleeding our jobs, he may be bleeding our economy, he may be taxing us to death, he may be prices, but he's nice. I think there's so in order to add, do you understand what I'm saying? I think they want flags
The
more than
same.
they want change.
The same daddy that will lead us to a nuclear war, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. But I think
Oh, I
we're
don't know.
in that topic of healing. You know what I mean? But anyway, to answer your question, no, policy wise, it's been across the board. As far as unarmed blacks, police
Hmm.
death in 2019 was 10. Five of those 10, or I'm sorry, yeah, 5 of those 10 were attacking the cop at the time, because
Yeah.
driving your car into a human being or into a cop is technically unarmed. One of
Yeah.
those 5 left was an accidental discharge, and the cop was black. And the 4 left, 2 were brought up on charges. Right
Hmm.
now, is
Hmm.
there more we can do? Should that 10 be 0? Absolutely. But factoring in how complicated, even well-trained cops, when they're in the thick of things and literally someone's about to die. I mean, like you're saying,
It's
like
a matter of life and death sometimes, and I really get and feel the police right now. I don't envy them their position at all, and especially I guess that the big relevant thing in the U.S. in America in general is the fact that you guys are able to carry whichever weapon with you at all times, and that's something
depending
that
on
I
the
never.
depending
Yeah, and depending on the state, right? And that's something that we don't experience over here in Australia. For example, me from Europe, it's you need to go through lots of licenses, in order to get a gun or what else. But I understand when they all do this, snappy decision that it's a matter of like life and death sometimes, because even like cops die, obviously, for a matter of like a millisecond. But it's just that sometimes it's you see those videos, and that black or person of color was doing like really fuck all, and they get shot for fuck all reasons. And that's what drives the outrage of the whole world when this is happening. But it's more complex than that, and I get it.
right, especially
And
there
yeah,
aren't
sorry, go ahead.
no, I mean, there aren't a lot of videos these days, especially from front to back, like meaning they're longer than 30 seconds, that are, I mean, George Floyd was an example,
Yeah,
but it's a very rare example, right? So even the next one that when Kai or whatever, Bryant, whatever, last week, she was trying to stab another woman,
yeah,
and the cop defending that woman shot the black girl. I mean, both of them were black. The cop wasn't, but I mean, the victim and the person stabbing them were black. But
yeah.
even Black Lives Matter is upset about that, right? So let's talk about the spiritual angle of that. When
Help.
we're coming from a place of, when we're coming from a place of fear, I know personally when I'm coming from a place of fear, and it
Yeah,
happens less often, woohoo, but it still happens.
yeah,
That's an insatiability. There's an insatiability. I am never satisfied when I'm coming from a place of fear. When I'm living in a place of fear, revenge, whatever it is, there's not enough sex, there's not enough adulation, there's not enough money, there's not enough whatever, because I am feeling an emptiness. I'm not feeling the truth. I don't want to just know. I want, I want the comfort or the safety feeling that I'm not getting. And that's
that's
why
right.
I think it's the same thing with that,
I think so. And Black Lives Matter is also another big topic, because I believe that they're feeding a lot of that fear into the Black community, and sometimes are also cherry picking the Black cases that they want to denounce. So that says a lot in terms of healing, and also preying on those people's insecurities. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do, and sometimes people find it easier to blame the other person and point a finger against them, rather than just look at their own lack of something that they need to feel.
Right. Okay
Yeah,
to go a couple more minutes?
yeah, go for
Okay.
it.
I would love to transition into, because, obviously we've gotten nice and vulnerable on here, and we've also talked about some sticky situation. But I'd love
Hmm.
to know just a little bit deeper as far as not personal whatever, but like a little bit deeper on what was the because we're going to obviously be there's going to be people listening who feel like they want to be on the other side of that work, right? Just like all of us do. I want to be
Yeah.
all better. I don't want to do writing. I don't want to. Every time I realize I need to do writing, I'm like, yeah, I don't want. I just want to be spiritual without being human. Um,
Yeah.
but what helped you to that decision? Because you said that you felt like you were being pulled towards a spiritual, deeper, inner work, whatever it is, direction. What
Yeah.
helped you really click it? What do you remember? A specific day, a specific moment, a specific trigger to it?
Yeah, I think that that's what many people refer as the dark night of the soul, meaning like there's like some sort of point of no return where you are so stagnated and so sad and so stuck in the same old patterns that you kind of break down. And that's where you feel like, oh, fuck, I guess that there's something that I need to do outside of my usual habits to help myself lift up and live in a different way. And the thing is this, like, you don't have to do it on your own. Some people are, able to read a self-help book and they can pick themselves up so easily. Some others, they just need, some some sort of like extra work, and they need some extra help, and they need a very supportive network around them to really, really heal and fall into, and practice different habits. It's all a matter of habits. And as far as I know, I think that you can build a new habit in 90 days, around 2 months-ish. So if you really start practicing just one thing a day, that is just different than your usual, day-to-day practices, you will feel a bit of a shift after 2 months. And then you continue. It doesn't have to be that overwhelming work. You just need to change one thing. And for example, one of the first things that I started doing was mindful teeth brushing. So for a couple of minutes a day, during the day, whenever I was brushing my teeth, I really was just taking my time and being mindful while doing so, just to bring myself to that presence that every spiritual teacher talks about.
Right.
You just stop with the sensorial sensation that brushing your teeth, does. So for
What's
example,
that
I don't know,
sensorial
the
sensation?
yeah, like the taste of the
Oh,
toothpaste, and what you smell, what you feel, and all that, all that stuff around.
right, right, right.
And then you go from there. And if there's a book that I can suggest, I would go for the new book from Dr. Nicole Lepera, How to Do the Work. And she is the sort of work that I would like to end up doing. So that's sort of a holistic psychology therapy. So you
How do you
don't.
spell her name, by the way?
Hmm?
How do you spell her name so people can look her up if they want?
So on Instagram, it's called the Holistic Psychology, something like that. Yeah, the Holistic Psychologist. And from there, you see all her posts, and all the work that she suggests doing, how the ego works, and how to be more aware, and all that stuff. The thing that I like about holistic psychology in general is the fact that mind, body, and soul are all connected. It's more like an Eastern point of view, about this sort of relationship, rather than the Western point of view, where you treat the mind, you treat the symptoms of the body, everything is kind of separate. But by doing this, you really are shifting your mindset in a way that then it trickles down into a healthier body, a healthier, soul. So it's a bit complex, but it's doable. And applying a little bit of her, suggestions from the book, it really did wonders on me.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I started with like a minute of meditation. I just started as like, okay, even though I'm gonna be
It's
crazy, I'm gonna do 60 fucking seconds. You know what I mean? Like,
it's that simple. Like, you really need to do very, very little at first, and then you kind of step it up. Like, okay, from a couple of minutes of, I don't know, whatever, brushing or going for a run, I'm just gonna instead, I don't know, sit down and do a guided meditation. Or I'm gonna apply mindfulness in some other aspects. For example, I don't know, dishwashing. Just you can be mindful in any action you do during your day. um and it's really, really shifting.
and I'll we'll there was one other thing I wanted to say, but I can't remember what it was. But at the very least, I wanted to say this because there are a lot of points. I mean, obviously, there's, we do need more spiritual, emotional, whatever outreach to like kids,
Hmm.
especially like high school kids need to not just know. I think they should learn how to, whatever, balance check, but whatever, but also how to talk to themselves and how to, you know what I mean? At least a little spiritual shit, whether they want to be Buddhist or Jesus-y or whatever. They're just something where you're being mindful, right? But
Hmm.
so, and there's more resources for people, especially if you live in a metropolitan area. But
Hmm.
one of the benefits of social media is that is a tool for people to be like, oh, there are other people not like who are like me. I had different voice X. So this Black woman from England who felt like she was the only one thinking some like conservative type of feelings. And then she told the story about how her friend just said two words, Candace Owens. Her friend just said
Oh,
Candace
right, yeah.
Owens, and she was at this point, a different voice X, Ada was at this point where she was feeling hopeless and she was feeling down, and just
Yeah.
Googling Candace Owens shifted her entire thing, right? So social media can be a powerful tool. If you feel like you're the only one, I don't know how to start, I certainly don't want to, get dunk, I don't want to be a monk. I still want to say fuck. You know what I mean? I still want to I still want to fuck. You're like, I don't want to be what
Of
I've
course.
right. I don't want to be what I've labeled spiritual or religious.
Yeah.
Resources are, or one of the resources are free apps. I have an app on my phone for
Yeah.
meditation. Some of it's
Yeah.
guided, some it's Insight Timer I use. Some of it's
Oh,
guided.
yeah, I have it too.
Yeah. Sometimes I
Yeah.
do the timed one, and sometimes I do the guided one. And then also follow spiritual-ish accounts. Follow spiritual accounts. Universal Egg is
Mm.
one of them. You know what I mean? Like knowing that, okay, this is a spiritual awareness, but also a tactile, pragmatic approach to it, and an understanding approach, a self-understanding approach, is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I felt like that when I first started this account. I didn't know how many people were out there like putting that content or that similar content. Like at the moment, the Universal Egg is mainly based on spiritual memes and spiritual reels, because I think that it's a quick and easy way to get through, a concept that is like it takes like lectures to get through that concept, but you kind of give the gist to the people that there's like a higher self and a shadow self, and you need to work, those ones together and integrate them in order to heal. And for shadow self, I mean like, all the ego that we were talking about. And this higher self is that sort of like, divine projection of yourself, like the one that, is above it all and watches you failing and knows it better. So yeah, it's very, very simple concept. It's thrown out there. And then I guess that people, if they're curious enough about what's that about, they will do their own research. And maybe they will find, longer lectures about it, or books or whatever. And I was amazed when I found like a bigger community on Instagram, but even like on YouTube, wherever you go,
Right.
it's huge.
Yeah. And you're on TikTok too. I saw that.
Yeah,
I love that one I posted where you're like, ding dong. That was funny.
it's weird because it's so relatable. Sometimes you're just like meditating over there, just chilling, and there's something that like so suppressed, in the subconscious, and it just pops up violently. And there's something I need to sort again.
And being, I love you ever listen to Louise Hay?
Oh, no, not actually.
Louise, oh, she passed away a few years ago, but she is my grandma. I love that woman. And it's
Mm,
all very like, to get super hippie with it, she does like positive affirmations.
right.
You had told me 2 years ago that I would be into positive affirmations, I would have not believed.
Fuck
But
you.
yeah, exactly. Take a positive affirmation and forget. No.
Yeah.
But I really, and one of the things that she says is in those moments, or maybe it's a universal spiritual idea, but in those
Hmm.
moments where I'm losing, I'm squirrel mind, that's when I need more love, not less. That's not the time to go, stop being in your head, you fucking piece of shit. No, 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 no. That's when I need more understanding. I need more love. I need more room. I need a bigger net. You know what I mean? And so
Oh,
just
yeah.
as another idea to the new people who are interested in, and again, you can put these spiritual practices into whatever religion you are or not, you know.
That's right. We're really talking in general over here. You can like, apply it and personalize in whichever religion you're practicing. That's the cool part.
Or even not practicing. Lots of atheists meditate,
Yeah.
but but during those times where you're going to start understand that it's going to be weird and you're doing the right thing, you're right where you're supposed to be. I know you
Yeah.
think you're not because you're special. No, you're right where you're supposed to be as well. Period. The fucking end. You know what I mean? And I know everything because I'm Peter Feliciano. So
Yeah, perfect. No, and I totally agree with that. On top of it, I would say when people start feeling that it's not the right thing to do because they feel resistance or they feel bad about it, I guess that sometimes it's the only way through. I know that sometimes it feels like, oh, I should only do according to whoever positive thinking is out there. I only should do what makes me feel good and what makes me feel safe. But sometimes the best way to feel safer on the other side is to go through that pain and go through that suffering and those wounds. And like you were saying very well, apply a lens of, love and, heartful projection towards it. Like you really need to be very, very self-compassionate when you go through that, slippery slope of
right.
the past.
And the future and the present. Ladies
Yes,
and gentlemen, the wonderful universal egg. Again, it's the underscore universal underscore egg.
that's right.
Amazing. Everybody, wherever you're listening, make sure you subscribe, make sure you share, make sure you like, make sure you leave a review, you iTunes people especially. Share this with your spiritual friends or your not so spiritual friends, your liberal friends, your conservative friends, your conservatish friends. Again, go find my music at my YouTube, and also it's going to be on my Spotify and my iTunes as well. I'm just waiting for CD Baby to upload it. But yeah, new instrumentals and also a cover song on May 14th. And then lastly, you can find me on Instagram at Peter_Feliciano, on Patreon at patreon.com/conservatish, and pretty much everywhere else. Again, thank you so much, Ms. Universal Egg. It has been a pleasure. I really appreciate
Thanks, Peter.
it.
Thanks for having me.
I'll go ahead and stop the recording.